So again, welcome everyone. I am going to walk us through Kuali Ready. I want to make sure that everyone is at your dashboard, and if you are, if you can please select plans and then click on your plan name.
And you may only have one. There may only be one plan there if you're only assigned to one.
And to make edits to the plan, you're going to click on edit to the right. And what we're going to do today, we're going to walk through all of the tiles at the top of the Ready template. We're going to go from plan details over to information technology. And each of these tiles have additional tiles to the left. So before we get started, I want to mention three things. One, when you're working in Ready, make sure you always save whatever you put in. I don't want you to lose any of your data. So once you key in any information over to the right, you're going to always click on save. The second thing is we highly recommend that there is only one user and one plan at a time, because Ready will overwrite the information that the other user put in. And then lastly, if you get stuck on any page within Ready, we have a guidance tab over here for you in the gray shaded area, and it'll give you some guidance on how to complete that particular page. So with that, we're going to get started in plan details. All of your plans should have a department name listed here. If you do not have a plan description, we ask that you key that information in. If you don't have it handy, you can pull it from your internet or your intranet. And what I like, go ahead.
Sorry, Janice. This could also come off your department description if you have a mission statement or something like that. Be brief. We only need a couple of sentences here.
Correct.
But go ahead. Let's take a minute, Janice, to just have them pop something in right now.
Sure.
If we move quickly, what I'd like you to do, and there are areas that we're going to do that, just give yourself some notes so you understand what you need to do when you go away and don't have us to ask. So just give yourself a quick note in there so that you can then complete it after the fact. But this one's pretty easy. Everybody knows the description of their department. Okay.
And along the way, if you guys have any questions, please stop Terry and I, and we will answer those for you, okay? Your plan should already have a major division selected. If you guys use acronyms at your institution, you can select those from the drop-down box here. The next, we are gonna, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm going to keep interrupting you,
Janice. That's okay.
I apologize in advance. If there's nothing in the acronym box right now, that means that your admin has elected to not use that field. So just ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Your head of unit should already be populated. So we're going to go down to the number of personnel. So what I like to do in this section is add in any part-time staff members, any student staff, and any full-time. Key those numbers in the boxes that are provided. And then from there, we're going to go to department type. You can select more than one. The department types were provided by the admins, and they are already in the system, so you can just select the box that is appropriate.
And those will look different for each of you. You're not going to see what we have here.
Yeah, it'll totally be different from what we have. And then we're going to select buildings. You may or may not have buildings already listed in your plan. If they are correct, that's fine. If they need to be deleted, if they're incorrect, we can click on the garbage can over here to the right. If you need to add an additional building, click add a building. And
when
you're
you
going to
add a building, if that's been pre-populated by your admin, you'll get a list of the buildings on campus or at campus that you are in. So you can go ahead and select it from there. If you can add multiple buildings if you're distributed.
Yeah, like this one is a great example of multiple buildings. And then you'll notice on the right where they've added additional comments, which is the room numbers or the actual floor that this particular building that you guys are sitting in. Once you're done adding the different buildings, we're going to ask a question here regarding your evacuation plan. You're going to select the appropriate answer from the drop-down list. Then we're going to ask for your cost center or department number. And this is the number that you would use if you needed to order any type of supplies for your department. That would go here. And then last, we have a comment box. You could add any comments here to the plan details page that you need. And once you're done, please click on Save over to the right. Any questions here? Feel free to come off mute and just let us know what the question is.
Janice, I have a question.
Mhm.
On my plan, it says cost center or department number. The person before me put NA, and it says Stanislaus does not use cost centers. So, but I mean, we'll use chart strings for billing. So if we needed to order something, you know, have something printed, we might use a billing number, a chart string type number.
Okay.
Is that the same as the cost center?
It is. It's just a different name. So what I would do is remove what's there
Okay,
and then type your number in that box.
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any additional questions here? Okay, we're going to move down to action items. So let's say you have a cost number, a cost center number, but you don't know it. This is where you can add a new action item, which I call the to-do list. Simply click on new action item. Type here. I'm just going to type just to show you guys. Let's see. Cost number. Give the action item a name. If it's tied to any particular critical function, you can select that from the drop-down box. You only need to complete cost and cost frequency when you're completing an action item if it actually is applicable. Excuse me. For example, thank you. For example, if you needed an action item to have someone in your department order laptops, you would select the cost. Let's just say 1,000 to 10,000. Select a cost frequency. This would be a one-time purchase. Then you're going to assign this action item to someone. But before you do that, I want to just give you my recommendation. Whenever you assign someone to an action item in Ready, it's going to send an email to that person. If they are not familiar with or never heard of Kuali Ready, they're going to probably delete the email or consider it spam. So what I would do is either assign the action item to yourself until you can talk to that person, or assign it to them, but make sure you let them know that it's coming. So in this case, let's say if I was going to assign this to myself, I would just start typing in my name. It would appear. I would click on it. I would assign a due date for this action item. Within whose scope, I'm going to let the person that's receiving this know who's responsible. So let's say it's going to be my unit and another unit. I'm going to select my unit together with other units on campus. Then I'm going to give the action item a status, not yet begun. And you can give it additional details. Let's say retrieve action, I'm sorry, not action item, cost number from Mary and billing. You will put those details here, click save. Janice Nicholson will receive an email stating that I have this action item assigned to me and what the due date is. They can click in it and they can come into Ready and make the appropriate updates. Any questions on how to log an action item? And again, if you get stuck, there's always guidance here in the gray shaded area. I'm going to click cancel because I really don't want to save that. Here on this screen, it'll show all of the action items for this particular plan. It could be one, it could be several. You can filter by the display, or you can sort by the different options here. Next, I'm going to go down to department documents if no one has questions on action items.
Janice, real quick on the action items, once they are, say, resolved or completed, does it keep a history or does it just remove them?
They won't be removed. They will remain here. You'll see this very first one, the status is completed, but it's still here.
Okay.
Mhm.
It doesn't like put any of the in progress at the top and the completed at the bottom?
It does not sort that way, but you can choose to select, let's say if I want to do in progress, I can filter by that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome. So department documents, this is where all of the department documents for this particular plan are stored. At this screen, you can come in and view the document. You'll see the name, the description. You'll see the day that it was uploaded. You cannot add a document on this screen. I'll show you where you can do that within Ready. This screen, again, only shows you the document that's attached.
So there's a couple of places, and Janice is going to show you where those are. I just want to say that you can add documents where it makes sense. For instance, if you have a standard operating procedure for one of your critical functions, you can attach that here. If you have a long contact list of folks and you don't want to add each name individually, you can add it, not here, but you can add it in Ready so that it acts like a library. Now, I almost encourage against that. I prefer to see a link here to a folder that's out in the cloud and have all of your documents well organized in a document repository somewhere, and just refer to it through a link here in the Ready application. But you do have the option to add documents here in Ready.
All right, we're going to go down to manage plan access. So this is where you give access to a user so that he or she can come into this plan. They could be a plan manager, which means that they would control the plan access. They would be able to make edits and changes to the plan, or you can assign a plan editor. He or she can come into the plan and make any edits to it. And then we have a plan viewer access. He or she can only view the plan. They can't add or change access for anyone, and they cannot make any updates. So here, if you need to add someone to your plan now, you would type out their first name. Once it appears, you would click on it, select the appropriate access, and again, the guidance will break that down for you. It'll give you the description of the plan manager, editor, or viewer. And let's say if I wanted to make myself a plan viewer, I just need to view the plan. I really don't need to come in and make any changes or anything. I would select plan viewer, then click on add user to plan. And then that person will be provided instant access and they would appear in this list here. I'm already here, so I'm not going to save this. Let's say if you have someone that's already listed under your particular plan and he or she no longer needs to be, you can simply come in here and delete them, and that will remove their access. Any questions under manage plan access?
Janice, this is Misty. I do. So I'm listed as admin, but under this plan access, I'm not listed.
You should be listed as probably a plan manager, Misty.
Okay, because that was what I wasn't sure of, is how to add me. And then, oh, okay. Laura was in there, but it did not have the delete button until I added me, and now hers has the delete button. Okay.
It's a really good discovery, Misty.
It is.
Just found. It's good for admins to have access to all of the plans, and you do from the administrative area. But here, looking at the user view, if you add yourself, you can go in and then you can actually manipulate the plans as well. Like you saw, you could delete somebody. So it's good. That's good for the admins that are on the list to know that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? If not, we will move down to update plan status. So let's say the plan has been reviewed. The plan manager is saying, okay, the department has reviewed the plan. It's now good to go. We're going to go in here and update this plan to current. We're going to click on update plan status. And let's say it was in progress. We would select current from the list, add comments, click on update status, and the plan status will automatically update for you. Any additional questions under plan details, under any of the tiles that we've reviewed so far?
Do you recommend going in and deleting any of the previous statuses, or just go ahead and keep a running list?
I would keep the running list.
Okay.
It's good to have the history if you ever need to go back for whatever reason.
Yeah. So if there are no additional questions, I'm going to move over to contacts. Kuali Ready has 3 separate contact areas. First is the department contacts. So here you'll see our department contacts for this particular plan. If this person is no longer in the department, you can simply delete them here. So let's say you need to add a new department contact. We're going to click on Add Department Contact. We are going to complete their first name, last name, title. And what I really want to point out under telephone, we want to put the office there under where it says just phone. For alternative or alternate phone, we want to put a cell phone number if we have one. And we want to do the same for office email. And the reason why you want to have additional or multiple ways to contact the person, for example, COVID hit, no one's at their desk, so you need an alternate telephone number to contact them at, and you may even sometimes need an alternate email address for them as well. So we highly recommend that you fill in as much of this information as possible. And then we're going to get to successorship. So we have levels of 1, 2, and 3. And this is the person that would be an appropriate substitute for this particular department contact. If there isn't one, you would just leave the radio button checked here. And if you can just go in and add a department contact if you don't have any in your plan currently. And once you're done, as always, we're going to click on Save. So key institution contacts are members of the college or university that are not in your department. You want to do the exact same thing for them that you do for the department contacts and add them in the system. In the event there's an issue, you may need to contact this particular person. So you want to make sure that you have their information listed here as well. If you currently have any key contacts listed that should be deleted, you can do that from this screen. If you have one that's not currently on your list, we can go ahead and click on Add, and we're going to fill out the appropriate information here.
Let's go ahead and add one, Janice. Have them
Okay.
add. No, not necessarily you have.
Oh yeah, have them do it. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say, if you're going to add one, make sure you put the department. For me, that is critical, because this person could move on to another position. If you have the department, then your contact or your user would know who to call. So if you can, go ahead and put in a key institution contact. And if you have both the telephone number and email, please key in both. And if you don't have the email or telephone number, for example, this is a great time to use the new action item, where you can create an action item to remind yourself or someone in your department to gather that information for you. And while you guys are doing that, external contacts. So those are contacts that are not employed by the institution. It could be a vendor or some sort of supplier. You want to add their information in here by clicking on Key External Contact, completing the company or organization, first, last name, of course, and the email, the address if you have it. Under comments, I would put any special instructions that may be needed for this particular vendor or supplier. And then 2 telephone numbers if you have it. If not, make sure you have at least one. And then from the drop-down list, this is you're going to select the appropriate title. It could be a sponsor, vendor. You would select that from the list. And then add in the products or what service do they supply to the institution. Add that here. And then if you have an alternate vendor, you can key in that information here as well. And then we're going to save that down. One recommendation, if your department contacts, let's say you have a department and there are maybe like a 200 or 250 employees, you don't want to take the time out to key in all of them. We highly recommend adding a contact list here. You can add it as a department document. And again, I'll show you where you can add the document. But just a suggestion so that you don't spend so much time typing out each individual contact. Does anyone have a question on either of the contacts that we require here in Ready?
This is Misty. I do. On the department contacts, not for us, we have a small department, but is there, what would you put in here if you didn't put somebody's name and somebody new came in here and it looks like department contacts was just blank? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
How would you know that these department contacts were located somewhere else, or you just, the new person wouldn't know that?
So what I've seen done is this in special, I'm sorry, in first name. You can do something like this.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. You
yeah.
would probably do. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any additional questions under contacts? If not, we're going to move over to critical functions. It's the fun part of the plan.
Really, First of all, does everybody understand, sorry, Janice, what a critical function is? Anybody want to raise their hand and say they need an explanation on critical functions? Awesome, awesome. Okay, go ahead, Janice. I'm not seeing any.
Okay. So critical functions, because we have limited time today, we're only going to ask that you add one or maybe two. So to do that, we're going to click on add critical function, and you're going to give your function a name. So type in that name. Once you're done, you're going to click on save. That critical function will now appear here in the list. So let's say I just added the training and awareness critical function. I'm going to go into it and I'm going to actually update the information around this critical function. Click on edit. We're going to add some description information about this particular critical function. I'll give you guys some time to add that in, and it doesn't have to be very long. And once you're done with the description, we're going to now name the section or unit that performs this particular function. And we highly recommend not putting a name, putting a title. And that's because someone could move from one department to another and they're no longer responsible for this particular critical function. And then here under responsible people, you can give names or you can actually name the group. And once we're done here, we're going to click on save over to the right. And then we're going to complete the tiles to the left. So if you're done, we're going to move over to levels of criticality. And I want to walk through a new function that Ready has, which I absolutely love. So prior to now, if your users came into the system, they had to figure out what level of criticality they should apply to each critical function, 1, 2, 3, or deferrable. So now what Ready does, it'll ask a series of questions. Depending on your particular answer to each question, it's going to rate this particular critical function for you. It's going to recommend, let's say, a critical function 1. You may or may not agree with it. If you agree with it, you would select yes at the very bottom. And then Ready would apply that particular level to this critical function for you. If you don't agree with it, let's say Ready is saying it's a 1 and you're like, yeah, it's really not that important. I can wait over 24 to 48 hours for this particular function to resume. You can say, yeah, I don't want to pick your 1. I'm going to go with 2. So down here, you would select no. You can provide an explanation on why you're going with the 2 versus the 1. And then you would save it down to the right. One thing to note in this particular screen, let's say for the very first question, it's going to ask you to provide an explanation if you select possible or applicable. If you select NA for any of the questions, you do not need to provide any explanation. So I'm going to give you guys some time on your particular critical function to answer these questions, and let me know if you have any questions.
I have a question, because
Mhm.
my plan doesn't have anything rated as 1 or 2. I just see the NA possibly or applicable. It says current level of criticality is not documented. So should I go in and try to document that, or?
Yes, please. When you
So
click on levels of criticality, you should see the screen that I'm showing now. And then in the explanation box, you can provide your explanation after you click possible or applicable. And of course, once you make the updates, make sure we save down that information. Are we ready to move down to peak periods, or do you guys need a couple of more minutes?
Janice, I have a question about the recovery time objectives.
Mhm.
I noticed in this plan that that's really not filled out in ours. And I can imagine, I mean, doesn't that weigh into the criticality?
It does. So you're saying within the plan, nothing is selected from this drop-down box?
No.
Okay, yeah, they should, or whomever is completing the plan should select something for the RTO.
Yeah, the RTO, actually, right now, we need to configure the RTO for them. So we need a list of what RTOs your organization wants to have populated there, and we can fill it in.
Oh, that's good to know. I'm staying quiet in this area because it's new since I left the company, but if you want to send that to me, was that Misty talking?
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Yours is populated though, correct, Misty?
Yeah, mine's populated. So
Yeah,
just use what's there.
yeah, you can use what's here, but if they do not apply to your institution, you can send us a list and we can update those for you.
Yeah, they may have changed, Misty, since it was originally filled out. So this is a good opportunity for you to clean that up. If it's different than what's in there, probably best to just send it to Janice.
And I'll get Michael to make that awesome change for us.
Thanks.
So let's go down to peak periods. This particular critical function, are there peak periods? If so, we're going to select those from the list here. If all year, this particular critical function is a peak period, we're going to select all years. Or if there are no peak periods, just type in the explanation here. This is the standard that I tell people to put in, no peak period times for this particular function. Then we're going to go down to document. So here's where you can actually add a document. Because we're under critical function, this document or, excuse me, this document would apply to this particular critical function. You'll see that there's one already under this plan. It's the emergency contact list. It'll show the day that it was uploaded. And if I click on it, it will open up. Let's say we're going to add a new document. Click on add document in the blue. Type in the name of the document and the owner. Provide a brief description of the particular document. Let's say if it's a department contact list, you can just simply type that here. If the document is backed up, we're going to put the information on how it's backed up here in this box. And let's say you want to attach a document. You can drag and drop here, or you can click to attach from your computer. Now, the best option that I like for documents is adding the URL. That way, when you update it, the particular document, let's say it's stored on a shared system, it's in the cloud, you update it there, it'll automatically update and ready as well. So what we recommend is typing in the URL and then saving it here in the system. It'll save a lot of time with you making 2 updates.
Janice,
Mhm.
can you really quickly, when you have just a little break in there, go back and show where they can add an action item?
Oh, sure.
But wait till you get to a point where you can. It just came in through the chat, so I'm just.
Oh, okay.
throwing it out there.
Sure.
That was from me, Mary, and I found it.
Oh,
Okay.
awesome. Awesome. Great, Mary.
Great.
Thanks.
And actually, there's been a recent update with Ready, so you can add a new action item from almost every screen within Ready.
Yeah, I saw it right over the guidance.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Look for your resources, Mary.
Any questions on adding a document to Ready? So from this screen, also keep in mind, if you need to delete or edit this particular document, you can do that here. So with that, I'm going to go down to dependencies. So in the event there is a disaster or COVID part 2, we need to know your upstream.
Don't say
And
We don't want to hear that.
I got that from my niece. She said, we're going to have COVID part 2. I'm like, wait, what? But
No.
so upstream dependencies are departments that you would depend on if there is a disaster, and the downstream dependencies would be departments that depend on you. So we're going to start with upstream dependencies by clicking on add here. Your admins have already provided us a list of all of your departments. Your list may be smaller or longer than the list that I have here in this plan. You're going to select the appropriate dependency, let's say math, and then you click save. Let's say, for example, you need to depend on HR, you need to depend on IT and payroll. You're going to select all 3 of them from this list.
So
So let's
those are
say
going to be departments you're adding. Mary has a question. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so when you're saying dependency, that is somebody that you would be dependent upon to try to help you get your critical functions done? Is that what-
Exactly. It might be a department that provides a report to you. It might be the IT area that would help
Okay.
you get a laptop, something like that. It's a department that you rely on for something. And then in the downstream, that area, they depend on you for something.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. My screen is frozen. Why is that? 1 second. I'll fix this while you guys add in your up and downstream dependencies. If you have any additional questions, let us know.
Just for clarification on the dependencies,
Mhm.
is it strictly associated with that critical function? Because I think at times, you know, we think of our department as an overall and who depends on us, but then there's that actual critical function that we've identified, and that may vary. So correct, when we're looking at dependencies, just like it's under critical functions, you have to wrap your mind around, to get this critical function done, you
What do
know,
I need?
Which departments do you depend on, and which departments depend on you? So you're correct. It applies to each critical function.
so it may
And it
vary from critical function to critical function.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. And just to enhance that, what Janice said, if it applies to the entire department right now, your best thing is to just add it to each function. Because the dependency in Ready only sits at the function level. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you guys see my screen again?
Yeah. we're seeing-
Perfect. All right. Any remaining questions on dependencies? And one thing I like to point out, I was training a school, I think about a week and a half ago. One of their departments was not listed here. If you find that that's a problem, go to your admin and have him or her add that department within the system. And that way you can use it within your plans. So now we're going to move down to consequences. Keep in mind, we're still under the same critical function. So we're going to answer all of the questions that are listed here as it pertains to that critical function. Anything that does not apply, you can skip by putting in NA. If it does, or if it may occur, we're going to select the box here and then add a brief description. If you can't complete this particular critical function, will it disrupt teaching? If you select may occur, just give a brief description. And I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to complete that, or complete as much as possible. And if you find that you have a question on any of these questions, let us know. And then Misty, you mentioned the RTO, the recovery time objective. It's going to ask you that question here again on this page. So if it's not in your plans, make sure you go in and add that or correct the one that's listed. It's probably on 2 weeks.
Okay.
Mhm. And again, once you guys are done, make sure you save down because I don't want you to lose any of the information that you took this time to key in. And if you guys are just about done with consequences, we can move on to how to cope. Anyone need some additional time? Okay, I am going to move down to how to cope. Here, we're going to answer these particular questions all the way down to the bottom. Again, this applies to the particular critical function that you're working on. The very first question here is about space. How would you carry out this critical function if your usual space is not available? Here, I'm going to give you a recommendation. Because of COVID, we now know that you sometimes, if there's a disaster, you have to move off campus. So I highly recommend putting in here on campus and then putting the space that you would use. And then off campus, I would put what space you're going to use. For example, if I'm in building B, there's a flood, I'm going to move to building C. If there's something like COVID hits, I have to move off campus. So from, excuse me, for off campus, I would put work from home because that's what we would do.
You could also say work remotely too. If it's,
Oh, yeah.
if you're working from home, a pandemic is a good example of why you would work from home. But if there's an opportunity for you to not be able to be on campus, but you can still be with your team, that might be a local Denny's or a coffee shop or something like that. So if you're equipped to work from home, absolutely write this in here, but use the word remotely as well. Because if you have everything you need to work from home, chances are you have what you need to work remotely, and you'd want to know that your team can gather somewhere remotely.
And I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to complete the questions here. If you run into anything that you don't know or you're not sure how to answer, let Terry and I know.
Yeah, and be very specific here. You want to put something in these spaces that's going to be really helpful during that event, right? So yesterday during a session, we had somebody mention that in their plan where it said, what would you do if the network is not available? And you'll see that just about by Janice's cursor there, to the right of Janice's cursor. And their response was, we cannot work without the network. So if you think about that during an emergency, that's not helpful at all. What would you do if you couldn't have the network? A cyber attack might take your network down completely. What would you do? Right? You might move home or go off campus and use the internet, but can you get to the documents that are on the network that are saved out there in a shared drive? No, you can't. So you can say all critical documents are saved to something, the cloud preferably. So really be specific on what you would do if the network didn't exist. Or you
And
couldn't
Carrie
get
and Janice, that's kind of where I was struggling with
Mhm.
the plan, is because kind of going through a class at UCI on business continuity and really talking about strategies of, you know, okay, now your facility is not available, you know, you're working at half, staff, and but then my plan had one or two sentences and it really wasn't laid out, and that's the reason we were like, okay, where do we need to put that? Does that need to be in a separate document, or is this where we really need to expand on it, where instead of one or two sentences, because if I'm printing this and it's one or two sentences, it's really not a guide. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree. I would
Like,
put the information here instead of attaching it as a document. I would put it here to each applicable question.
okay.
Yeah, that's a great question, Misty. That we want to be specific enough so that it's helpful during the event. So just write it out there. And remember, everybody, this is not just your responsibility to complete this plan. Bring others on your team in to help populate this. If it's their function, they do this as their normal work, have them help with what the answers would be.
Yeah, and this is a good time. If you don't have the answers and someone on your team is responsible, click on new action item, create an action item and assign it to yourself or to that person.
If one of your solutions are to work remotely, please make sure that you have an action item. It's kind of a moot point right now during this pandemic era, but create an action item and make it semi-annual so that you are regularly testing that work from home. Even when you get back on campus and you've sat on campus for a few months, you may have things not operate if you had to go off-site in an emergency. For instance, VPN licenses expire, passwords change, or we forget them. So have an action item that your team tests it at some frequency, going offline and going off campus and working remotely, even if they just run across, to the library and try to connect in, just somehow that they can test all of their tools.
Last question on just this, how to cope. Is there any limitation? I mean, under how big of a document we can put under staff disruption of phone services? Is there?
Well, Michael, do you know the answer to that? Is there a limitation to characters in any of these fields?
Yeah, there's some of these fields do have a limitation, but it should be a very large number. Did we have, I didn't miss the part of the question, so I don't know.
Oh,
the
yeah. Oh,
context.
sorry, Michael. Sorry. So, hey, everybody, this is Michael Pacelli. He's our developer, our very talented Ready developer. So the question, Michael, was if they have an extensive answer that they want to put in any one of these fields on how to cope, what is the character limitation? Can they write like a paragraph in there, or are they limited?
My expectation is that it should be 16,000 characters, but I need to look it up.
Yeah, I'm thinking as well that we tested it a few years ago. That's why I'm not remembering it really well, that it does hold quite a bit in there. If you run it, I would just suggest if you run into something you're trying to write out, let us know.
Yeah, if you get an error, we can increase it. It is not a trivial matter for us to increase it, but if you actually want to store something in there and you didn't have enough room, we could absolutely increase it. Actually, I'm starting to remember it's a shared limit for the how to cope section. So
what does that mean, Michael?
That means that whatever the limit is, if you use up some of the, like in the answer for space, plus the answer for staff, plus the answer for disruption of phone services, there's a shared limit. They all get added together.
Ah,
So a total for the page.
There's
for-
a
yeah.
total, yeah, there's a total.
I see.
For
That's
yeah,
okay. I
at
hadn't
least
heard
6
that.
of the fields here are sharing. I think there's 7 questions. So I think one question is not sharing or something like that. But
Does that
Okay,
also
good.
include the comment section, Michael? Do you know? At the
I
very
think the
bottom?
comment might be the one that's not sharing.
Yeah,
I'm
Okay.
trying to look it up.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thanks. And at this time, if anyone has an action item that he or she wants to record, do that over here to the left by clicking on action item. And if not, are there any questions for any of the tiles here under critical functions?
And sometimes these are confusing. So if you have any questions here, speak up. And also, if you don't have time to write everything in because we are moving rather quickly, just put some notes to yourself so you know what, when you get together with your team, what you need to fill in. So let's see, Mary has a question. Oh, okay, Mary. No, that's fine.
Yeah,
Come on back when you can. And we also have the afternoon session if you
Yeah,
want to join in.
I'll be back towards the end of the afternoon one. Great. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, though. Thank you.
Thanks,
Good, you're very
Mary.
welcome.
I'll see you in a little bit.
All righty.
All right, so we're going to move over to key resources. And we have another list of questions for you. The first question is going to ask if you have a printed emergency contact list. Select the appropriate answer here. And there are several questions here on this page, so I'm going to give you guys some time to answer them. If you do not have the answer right now, you can always use the new action item, create an action item so that you can get the answer put into the plan. Okay, any questions here? If you're done with the questions, please click on save to the right. You don't want to lose anything. I'm going to go down to work from home. Prior to COVID, this question, a lot of people said not applicable, but now that has since changed. We're asking for information on anyone who works from home or can work from home. You're going to key in that person's name. Select the position from the drop-down list. Then you're going to answer the questions over here to the right. And then you're going to click on save. If you have more than one, that's fine. We just want to today get you to get one into the system or into the plan, and then you can come back and add the others later. But do you have any questions on this screen?
What do you recommend in comments? What do you think is beneficial? I mean, mine says like, can access the VPN and OneDrive, but is there something else that you've seen that you think is beneficial to put there?
I've seen a lot of institutions leave that blank, and they only put special things there. Like this is the only employee who has access to check stock or something like that. Something very particular to this particular worker.
You may also put if there's any special needs for home. If there's
Oh
any,
yeah, that too.
right, anything out of the ordinary. Janice's example is a really good one. If there's, you know, certain resources that are needed, this would be a good place to put it.
Then once you finish there, we're going to go to teams. And here's where we're going to ask if there are any particular teams within your department. You'll notice here that there are 2 teams listed. It'll show what the purpose is and who those team members are. Let's say we need to add a new team. You would click that here, give the team a name, a purpose, and you can add any particular comments.
Hello, Janice.
Yes, hi, Karen.
Hi. I don't have that on my pick list. I don't have team skills or staffing requirements. It just goes straight work from home to documents.
So that's because your institution did not select those to appear in your
Okay.
plan. If you want those added, the admin would need to go back and add those in. And then they would provide us with the list and we can put those in the system for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
I'm glad you brought that up, Karen. Others may see the
Yeah.
same thing. That's an option that is selected at the time we help the admin set up the system for their institution.
Yeah, that's correct. So some of you may not see team skills or staffing requirements. So for those of you who see skills, you'll notice that the skill is listed. There's a description. You can edit that skill or delete it from this screen. If you need to add an additional one, you would select add skill. And again, if the admins added this into the system, the skills will be listed here. If there are no skills, you do not need to add anything to this at all. And that's the same for staffing requirements. If you don't see this here, don't worry about it. If you do have this, we're going to click on new requirement. We're going to select the appropriate critical function. We're going to select the staff category. And if your institution is using shift, there should be different shifts that appear here. And the main thing you want to answer on this page is the full-time employees that are required under normal conditions. You would select from the drop down. And then we want to know how many full-time employees are required during the crisis. And then you would select save. And again, if you don't have this information, please make an action item so that you can come back into the plan and complete it. The next option under key resources is documents. Again, this is where you can add a document to the system by clicking on add document. Currently, you'll see any documents that are listed when they were uploaded. If it has a blue link, that means it's a URL and we can just click on it and it'll link out to that particular document. Or if you need to edit or delete a document from this screen, you can do that as well.
And Janice, sorry for jumping in.
No problem.
When you were adding documents at the critical functions, everybody, that was when that document applied specifically for that critical function. So that might be an SOP. But when you're in key resources, it applies to the entire plan, the entire department. A good example here would be a contact list. It pertains to the entire department. So there's a differentiation there. Will you click on add document for a second for me, please?
Sure.
See, here is it. Yeah, it's not asking for the function here, correct?
No.
Right. So that's the difference. In the other one, it will ask you for the function that it's associated with. All right, just an FYI there.
So we're going to go down to equipment and supplies. I'm not going to have you complete this due to the time, but when you can, I need you to go back into this and complete each one of the office equipment that is listed. So for workstation, this particular plan has 2, and then you can add any comments about that. It's going to inquire about everything from laptops to printers to fax. The only thing that's not addressed here is VPN. What I suggest is adding that here under other equipment if it's something that you or your department members would need. And if there are any additional supplies that will be needed, you would key that in here as well. And the very last tile under key resources is facilities and transportation. So we're asking if there are any special places or facilities that are needed in addition to your office or classroom, or maybe a special lab. If so, you would put that information in. If not, I usually recommend just putting in NA. Utilities is something that's your admin can elect to have in the system, and you would select from a drop-down box. So if you click on add utilities and nothing appears, please don't feel like something's wrong. It's just that we did not have the information, so that's why it's not there. If you do have something there, you can select from the drop-down box. What I usually recommend here for utilities is that you put in a special utility that may be needed. Let's say a propane tank, something that's of the extraordinary, something that's unique, not just like the regular gas or water, because we know if there's a disaster that you may need those things. And then under transportation, you're going to list any special transportation that's needed. Let's say you work in a lab and you're in building B, it floods and you need to move over your nursing school. You need to move over all of your equipment from one building to the other. You may need special transportation for that. If so, list that here. And if there are any other resources at all that you feel that you may need, put those in the very last box under other resources.
Another example of transportation is if you have buses on campus, but that only applies if your department is responsible for it. So keep that in mind. Anything that you're writing in the plan, that's just an example.
And then as always, make sure you guys click on save over to the right. And if you have any questions under key resources, please let us know before we move on to information technology. I'll take the silence as a no questions. So under information technology, we're going to go over the tiles here. The very first one is central application. This is any applications that are owned by IT. You would list those here. So two things, you can edit or delete any applications that are currently in the plan here. You can add new applications by clicking on new. Select the application, and the applications that are in the list were provided again by the admin. So let's say for some reason an application is needed, but it's not on the drop-down list. You can enter a custom application here. Let's say Slack. You would select the level of criticality for this particular application. Since we use Slack every day, I would say 1. And then it's going to ask how quickly do you need the application to be recovered? I'm going to say less than 24 hours. And once you're done, you're going to select save. And that particular central application will save down to the plan. And it will appear on this list. Any questions under centrally owned application? So we're going to go over to department applications, and these are applications that are owned or housed within your department only. If you do not have any special application that your department uses or owns, you don't need to put anything here. However, if you do, we're going to click on add application, and we're going to complete this. We're going to give the application a name. If you know the functional or technical owner, we're going to key that information here. And what we're really asking here, we're trying to confirm your backup information for this particular application. And because it's owned by the department, you would have that information. If you are not the particular person that would have it, what I would highly recommend is creating an action item, assigning it to yourself, or assign it to the person that will have the information. And we're going to need like the backup frequency, the backup media. Is it manual or auto? And then if you have an application, I'll give you some time to add it in now. Just don't forget to click save. Any question under central or department applications? So I'm going to move down to servers. So here we have a list of servers. Well, we only have one. We have a name, we have an explanation, and there's a document attached to it. And because it's in blue, I can click on it because it's a URL. If I needed to delete it, I can do that from this screen. Or if I need to add a new server, I would click add server. And you would type in the needed information. Again, the very important thing here is the backup information. If your server is not housed in your department or you're not responsible for it, this information can be obtained from IT. Next, I'm going to move down to workstations. Here, we're going to ask you some questions about your backup method for your workstations. You're going to read the question, give it the applicable percentage, and then add any special comments that's needed. If you don't have all the answers to the questions here today, again, you can create an action item. And I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to update that or to stop me if you have questions.
Janice, I have a random question. At the
Sure.
I missed the beginning of this, but is this being recorded by chance?
It is, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Once you're done, please click on save. And then we're going to move down to the last item under information technology, which is how to start. And a lot of these questions are what I consider IT questions. If you find that you are unable or someone in your department is unable to answer these, I highly recommend finding some time to get some assistance from your IT department. But a lot of it, just reading the questions, I think you should be able to answer those. If you can't, again, you can always use our new action item feature. The funniest thing on this page is here, where it says visualize a flu pandemic. When I first read that, I'm like, that'll never happen. Now look at us.
And what you're saying is you jinxed us, Janice?
I hope not.
It was bound to happen.
Yeah.
So is this the only place that recovery strategies shows up? So I guess recovery strategies is really what I was talking about in that other section that I was asking to elaborate the how to cope.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
actually both areas. You can complete both of them, Misty, to just be thorough in what that particular section is asking. But yeah, they're both based on strategies. How to cope is really, all of that is really just around strategies as well.
Okay.
Hey, this is Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Hi. I take this section to mean more of a disaster recovery type strategy, specifically for restarting, the IT function, the servers, whatever is required to, because we have, like I said, at UC, we have a lot of distributed, decentralized IT areas, and they have their own servers and so on. So this is, this would be one place they could describe. I also suggest to people, if you already have a disaster recovery plan, to upload it in key resources as a document. If they already documented everything, which hopefully they have,
You're
that would.
absolutely right, Pam. This right here is actually relating to technology, but it's still a recovery strategy for that technology.
And that's called a disaster recovery strategy.
Thanks for that, Pam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the point Pam just made is a very good one. Don't confuse disaster recovery for what it sounds like. It is disaster recovery, but it's recovering the data center, everything technology, anything in the computing environment, where business continuity is recovering the business. All right, so that's getting operations and all of those folks back working, even maybe without the DR piece of it, without the technology. They may have an application or a data center outage, like a cyber attack. How are they going to operate without all of that? That's why we asked the question over there, what would you do if you didn't have the network? And here we're saying, how do we recover our computing environment? So when you hear disaster recovery, when it's related to recovering an institution, we're talking about the data center specifically. So remember that, because it's confusing to a lot of people. They think it's recovering from the disaster, like there's a flood in my building, but that has nothing to do with disaster recovery, the IT piece. All right, so it's confusing, but remember that when you hear it. That's a lot of people realize that.
Are there any additional questions under recovery strategies? So the very last item under information technology, of course, is our favorite thing, action items. If you needed to take some time to add an action item, you can do that from this screen as well. And so far we have reviewed plan details, contacts, critical functions, key resources, and now information technology. Does anyone have any questions on any of those sections? If you don't have any questions that you can think of now, if you get back to your office later today or sometime next week, please reach out to me via email, or my cell phone number is listed under in my email signature. You can give me a call or send me an email and I can assist you with those questions.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left. Does anybody want to talk about any area in the plan that confused them? It's a really great opportunity to open up the floor for discussion.
Were you planning to review the instruction section for like academic recovery?
Yeah, I don't, do we have anybody from academics on here? I think we just may have. Who did I see? We have Karen, you're from the academic side, correct, at ECU?
Yes.
Okay, so let's click on instruction and just show everybody. This is good for
Well,
admin.
I'm actually more from the research side of things.
Okay.
Not so much teaching and instruction.
Okay. So when we talk about instruction, we can go in here if we're from Pam. That's kind of complicated. I'd rather not get into it, but it's good for admins and we have the time. So let's do it. So here you can add a department. So say you're writing a plan for, and this is going to confuse everybody, but it's good for admins. If you're writing a plan for a department, say the business department on campus or the School of Business, you can add this for them. You would write the whole plan, just everything we just walked through. They still need contact information. They still need function. They still have critical functions like instruction. Everything else would be the same. The applications they use, all of that would be the same. So under the Department of Business, you may have an accounting department, right? Under the School of Business, you may have an accounting department. They would go in and they would, we would add the departments here. And then you have the opportunity to add action items here. Now, these action items are a little different than the action items over in the main plan. So it's called out specifically here. So an example would be, now we're teaching from home, right? We didn't think too much about this a year and a half ago, but now we've learned really cool ways of teaching remotely. Our syllabi looks different. There's just different things we have to do to make sure that we can teach remotely. That might be an action item. Let's look into better ways of doing this. Let's look into equipment we should have in the lab to help with that. And then I would also definitely, one that I would like to see here as an action item is test that remote teaching at some frequency, probably every semester or every quarter, depending on what you're using. But it's just an extra piece for folks that are on the academic side to fill out. And I won't waste any more time on that because we don't have those folks on the phone. But that's there, and it's a little bit extra to fill out just to be more specific.
Thanks, Terry.
Yep, you're welcome. What else can we answer for you? I know your heads are all spinning. Mine always is when I have to learn new software. All right, we're going to be on the line for another 8 or 10 minutes. You can feel free to stay on. If you're comfortable with what you've learned, please go ahead and drop off and enjoy the rest of your day. We do have another session starting at 12:45. I'm talking Mountain Time. Let me take a look here. We have another session starting at
2:45.
12:45. Yeah, 2:45 Eastern Time, 12:45 Mountain Time. You're all welcome to join that session. It's a different Zoom link, so you'll have to log out and log back into that one. But we'll stay here a few more minutes if you have any questions.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. And if you have questions later, again, keep in mind you can send me an email.
Janice, quick question. How do you know what prints in the plan? Like when you actually print it, does everything print out or just certain things?
Everything prints out with the exception of the documents. You have to print those separately.
Really? Okay.